Hello there, it's Susie Walker from Psychology's magazine for our 1 p.m. broadcast. And here we have the wonderful Anna Mathur, who is a psychotherapist. And we're going to be talking about how to reclaim our headspace from anxiety. I think many of us are struggling at the moment. I think what I'm finding, Anna, is that so many of us are struggling a little bit more with anxiety perhaps now than at the beginning of the lockdown. And there was lockdown, and we're going to be on lots of Skype calls, and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, and it was a novelty value.
So many plans.
And now we're so welcome, lovely to see your smiling face. Talk to us about anxiety and how we can reclaim that back. What are the first steps to kind of pressing pause on our own anxious thoughts?
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's such an important topic to think about, isn't it? And I think often only when we start actually thinking about it do we recognize how much headspace anxiety has been taking up. So anxiety in and of itself is fear. It's fear-based. It's normally around bad things happening. It's about kind of wanting control where we don't feel we have it. It's engaging with our vulnerability in our humanity. And all of those things are so challenging. And I think we all have our coping mechanisms to try and not think about those things that we feel anxious about. But it can be really helpful to take a moment to actually look at the areas in your life in which overthinking might be impacting. Is it affecting your sleep, for example? Are you going to bed worrying about your child's health and imagining all of these potential scenarios? Is it affecting your relationships in that you're actually so fearful of what someone might think of you that you're struggling to be yourself in that relationship? Is anxiety impacting the decisions you're making around you and your family's life? Are they based on what could go wrong? And I think only when we start really understanding that the impact that anxiety is having on our lives, how much headspace it's taking up, can we start to question, is this enough for me? Is there more for me than this? Maybe I can get some of that headspace back. Maybe I can get some more peace, and maybe I can find somehow some stability in the uncertainty, which sounds a bit of an opposing thing, but it's so possible. It doesn't need to rob us. So yes, understanding how it is robbing you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's let's just explore that. There's a stability in the uncertainty. So I know that for me, for my team at Psychologies, we were talking about it, we want some certainty back now. We want to get back to some new normals we were talking about. And then we realized that it's just, we're on it's not going to work because there is no certainty. And we need to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and there is no certainty. But how do we do that? What's the psychological process of becoming more comfortable with that?
Do you know what? One of the best things that I've been holding in my mind throughout this period of lockdown that has helped me most, I love a mantra, just a little sentence that you can remember and keep it in your back pocket, and you can whip it out for a moment of uncertainty. And mine has been, I will cross that bridge if I get to it. I will cross that bridge if I get to it. And I think so often with anxiety, it's our minds running ahead into all of these potential scenarios in which things can go wrong. And we can't tell ourselves, don't be ridiculous, that will never happen, because a lot of the things that we're thinking up are potentials, aren't they? We're not imagining an alien invasion. We're imagining sad things happening and hard things happening. So every time I've noticed my mind trying to get a sense of control, because anxiety also gives us a sense of control. Because if I consider every potential scenario, then in a way I'm preparing myself, surely, emotionally, so that would be less painful if it actually happened. When we know in reality, looking over our lives, that all of this preemption, should that worst case scenario happen, we've just emotionally gone through it twice. It's just robbed from us when actually we could have just been enjoying what we did have. So I like this mantra, I will cross that bridge if I get to it. It reminds me that I have crossed so many bridges in my life that had you told me I would go through that, I would have said absolutely no chance in hell that I could go through that and come out okay. And we do, because we're more resilient than we give ourselves credit for, and we're stronger than we give ourselves credit for. So, it's a reminder that I can look back and see I've crossed many bridges before. I can also acknowledge that I will cross that bridge if I get to it, because let's face it, a lot of what we fear happening doesn't. So sometimes it can be, just really helpful to have a little something to reground you back in the present and remind you that actually you're just making up stories about your future that may not happen. And if it did happen, you're more resilient than you think. There is support there for you. So that's been particularly helpful for me.
Yeah, so I think there's a piece here, isn't it, about, first of all, noticing the stories on your head and realizing it's not real. It's just a projection that you're doing, and it's not helpful. And then once you've, to have that mantra of, I love that mantra as well, we're stronger than we think. So if that happens, I'll cross that bridge. Great. Stronger than think. Okay, I'll deal with that. And then we come back to center. And then what? So you worry. Okay, I'm worrying. Okay, bring back to center.
Claude your, kind of drag your brain back. Two things. I find it really helpful to use a technique of distraction. So I like to count back from 100 in threes. So when I know that I'm going off into this potential, you cannot possibly think of all of these worst case scenarios and count back from 103s. Your brain just can't do that. So it's an immediate kind of I just start doing that in my head. 197. I'm really bad at doing it, which is good, because it's hard for me. So it means that it requires more of my attention. And the other thing, I think we can so often acknowledge that even talking about this, I don't know about you, Susie, but my heart rate's increasing and I'm feeling quite frantic. And using a grounding breath, in for 4, out for 6, doing that 10 times, and I guarantee you it physiologically switches off that stress response in your body.
My shoulders going down.
Yeah, even thinking about doing that, and it's really worth trying. Also practice these things when you don't need them, so that when you do, they're so familiar to you that you just grab them. So use that, practice that breathing when you're falling asleep. It will really help with your sleep as well, because it kind of it tells your body that it's safe. And I think often when we start overthinking, we click into that kind of that fight or flight mode. So it's just those two things, that reminder to your body, it's okay, I'm safe right now.
I think there's that piece around, for me, I do a worst case scenario. You say I'll cross that bridge, but for me, sometimes I'll go, okay, so if I lose my job and this and this and this happens, okay, what would I do? So to make a plan, I'd okay, well, I'm living on a canal boat at the moment. I can go out to the marina. I can live, for free on going down so I make a plan, this really bizarre plan about how I'm going to go up and down the canalways. And I'm okay. And I have a plan. So is that wrong then to do that? Because that makes me feel slightly less panicked. I'm okay, that would be the plan B. The worst case scenario, that would be my plan. So should I not do that?
No, that's really helpful. I think if you can do that without then constantly, every time you feel that anxiety, you're going back through that plan, you're pulling it all apart, you're creating all of these different offshoots of, if that bit of the plan doesn't work, and then maybe I'll do that. And I describe it sometimes like having a plan is a good idea. It's building that underground bunker. Should the bombs come down, you get into the bunker. The bunker is there, and that bunker is there to keep you safe. But the difference in going into that plan and pulling it apart and building it all up is getting into that bunker and living there, even though the war hasn't started. And I think that's what we often can do with a plan. Just acknowledge it, know that you've got it there. It's your contingency plan, and you can then tuck it away like a war bunker for you to engage in if you need it. But just make sure that it's not a rumination of, I've got my plan, but what if that goes wrong? And then what if that goes wrong? And then suddenly that itself becomes anxiety provoking. So if you're someone that likes a plan, brilliant, make a plan and then tuck it away. It's there, you've thought about it, and it doesn't need to be constantly unpicked, because then that's anxiety provoking in itself sometimes.
I think as well, for me that's really worked is the kind of beliefs around, out of my greatest crisis, out of my greatest challenges have become the greatest opportunities. And, from the tragic just to the everyday mundane things, it's when I'm challenged the most is where I become like a warrior. Do you know what I mean? I understand and I learn. And for me, it's always about, often I have blind spots that I can't see, something's not quite working in my life and I can't see what the problem is because it's unconscious, some unconscious behavior or some way I'm reacting to something. And that really helps me. So, but to have a kind of global belief of, oh, this is really challenging, but at the end of this is going to be really good because I'm going to grow and learn. So are those kind of beliefs helpful? And if they are, how can we create those kind of strong belief systems to kind of hang on to in this moment of crisis?
Yeah, I think it's just that reminder, isn't it, that you've been through hard things in the past and it's a process of going through it. And I think sometimes we just look at the mountains and we just feel completely overwhelmed by the enormity of what it seems is ahead. And we just have to remember that those trekkers, you know, when they're going through the hardest peaks, they're looking down and they're focusing on that next step. And sometimes we just need to stop looking at the mountain and just look down at what is directly in front of us and think, how can I get the resources? What resources do I have to enable me to take this next step? And I love, there's a quote, I can't remember who it's from, but it's always stayed with me. And it's saying, we've got just enough light for the step that we are on. You know, be kind to yourself in what you're expecting from yourself. If you're looking at a mountain, that is a mountain of steps. It's not a massive leap. So yes, those belief systems, they're kind. It's kind to have your attention drawn to the times that actually you've overcome and you've come through, to remind yourself that you can and you will again. Yes, you might need a bit of extra support and to call on extra resources, but we were never made to do this on our own. You know, we need other people along the way.
Yeah, sure. So psychologically, any other brilliant tips for us to kind of turn the dial down on anxiety and turn, and for me, it's always go to joy, to get the love and kindness and the feel good emotions, you know, how to start kind of reaching for those emotions rather than the kind of, I call it spiraling up and spiraling down. So when I find myself spiraling down, it's like, okay, how do I spiral back up again? I can feel myself going down. How do we do that? So what are the great psychological tips we can use?
Gratitude is such an incredibly powerful tool. I could fundamentally say that gratitude has changed my life. Gratitude draws our attention from all the things that could go wrong and the things that are bad to the things that are also right. And I think it's really important not to use gratitude as a way to shame yourself for having very human, normal responses to challenging times. It's just about, gratitude turns the light on in a dark room. You know, it doesn't say that what you're going through and the feelings that you have aren't valid. It's just the and. It is hard and there are good things in it. You know, it's sad, but there is also joy. It's just bringing balance. And so a really helpful tool that I find is turning I've got to I get to. And it's just a really simple tweak. And it you know, when I'm kind of huffing and puffing, and I've got to into I get to. And it's so simple, but there have been times when I've been huffing around, shoving another load of washing in, and then I'm like, oh, and then I think, no, I've got to do this load of washing. No, I get to do this load of washing. And that sounds a bit silly, so I'll unpick it for a second. I get to wash the clothes for my family, who I am massively privileged to have, my children, who I am so privileged to have. I'm washing their clothes that we are privileged to have bought. You know, I'm using a washing machine, which I'm privileged to have in a home that keeps us warm and safe. So suddenly I've turned something that I'm grumpy about to something that has actually almost brought me to tears standing next to my washing machine on a Monday morning, because it just switches the light on in that place. It doesn't say that it's not hard and mundane and a bit frustrating, and it just says, but also. So yeah, gratitude would be my tip too.
Yeah, your superpower, you know, is these things. I mean, and for us at Psychologies, you know, the whole magazine is full of these tools and things that people can use. And I mean, I'm such a fan of therapy and coaching and, you know, to do the inner work. So, you know, I would say is start with the inner work. You know, look at, you know, your belief system, look about the way you're thinking, challenge the way you're thinking. Is there a better way to think, you know, but there's millions and millions of ways. You don't need to do therapy or coaching, although I do believe in it, but it's just, there are so many ways to be able to spiral up, to turn the light on. And you don't have to be sort of sitting in the dark, be feeling absolutely terrible. There is a way out. You know, so, you know, I was saying yesterday that, you know, some of our readers do cold sea swimming, you know what I mean? So it's just about changing, you know, I mean, not me,
but just a different sensation,
amazing.
And it bringing you back, doesn't it? It kind of snaps you back into the now, the sensations of the now, the reality, and the living in the now, which is actually, we spend a lot of time living in the future, a lot of time being impacted by the past, but this is where the living is to be done. This is it. This is this moment. This is it. So the more, yes, we've got to think about the future. Yes, it's right to acknowledge the past as well and explore that for the impact that it's having on our now, so that we can free ourselves from some of those the challenges that we've experienced. But anything that is robbing us from this experience of life that we only have in this moment, it's so worth getting tips and tools and techniques. And that's what your magazine is just like packed with them, which is brilliant, just to give you hope. There's so much hope.
I mean, there is so much hope in it. I know what it feels to feel hopeless. I really do. And a lot of my team, sometimes we sit, the features meetings are like therapy sessions. So we sit down and I think, that's why you're so wise, because they have also been in places, be it mental health or challenges that we've all faced. And that's the thing is, you know, you're not alone. You know, we've all struggled, but there is a way through and there is a way up. And, you know, thank you very much for your wisdom today. And, you know, in terms of gratitude and dealing with anxiety and dealing with the everyday and living in the present, they're great fundamental building blocks to live a happier, healthier life. So it's brilliant. Anna, thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. Anna's going to do a Instagram takeover for us on mental wellness. So I will be promoting that soon. So thank you so much for joining us today, Anna. Lots of love.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. It's been an honor. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.